Not too old to start.
No, and absolutely. We also know that once you've had a hip fracture, for example, you're 3 times more likely to have another hip fracture. And we also know that 20% of people who have a hip fracture die within a year of that fracture.
Why?
So,
why on both counts? Why are you more likely? Is it your balance is off, or why more likely
very
to
few
die?
people, very few seniors completely recover from a significant fracture or a fall. So we know, first of all, it helps, it causes them to have a lack of confidence. Also, there's a long rehabilitative process to recover from hip surgery or hip fracture, and many of them don't engage in that process throughout to its full resolution. So you now have a functional deficit, your coordination and balance isn't great. And so then you get yourself in a cycle of not wanting to challenge yourself physically, so you become more sedentary and more inactive, and that perpetuates the whole cycle of bone density loss. So it's really important. Like, there are great solutions. For example, I recommend to almost all of my seniors who aren't afraid of the water to get into an Aqua Fitness program. They've got excellent Aqua Fitness arthritis programs throughout the city, and Aqua Fitness in a buoyant environment does so many positive things. Gets your heart rate up safely. In a deep water program where you're suspended by a belt, gravity becomes your friend for the first time in your life.
Forever, yes.
First time. And so you get that therapeutic effect. And water has its own resistance. And so that provides a bit of resistance training in a non-stressful environment for your joints. So those are some of the things that you can do quite simply. And Tai Chi, yoga, these things also have meditative value.
Sure.
So you get the relaxation and strengthening that goes with that, that produces it. So I think to follow up on your point, James, is that when you have osteoporosis and you've given that diagnosis, there is a lot to do, even if you're over 65, to reverse to some degree that effect and to be more preventative then forward from that point.
Okay, now it starts right here. It starts with how do I even know if I'm at risk for it? So when people do that health test that I have online, I ask all the inclusion criteria questions to see if you need to speak to your physician about having a bone mineral density test. It's the only way you really know where you stand, first of all. And then from there, you make decisions about, well, my bone density is great, so I'm doing some good things, or I'm osteopenic. I have some bone loss, but I'm not osteoporotic yet, or I already have osteoporosis. I'm in a more crisis state. I have to be even more aggressive. So you need to know where you stand. And so who should have a bone mineral density test done? There's a number of different types of individuals who are at risk, and if they do the test, it'll come back to them and tell them how to proceed. But you were asking about, why do so many people die within the year of having a fracture? And it's because when you have a hip fracture in particular, you go into the hospital, you lie down, you can't move. Fluid collects in your lungs, it becomes a pooling ground for bacteria. You're already older, your immune system's weak, you get pneumonia, and you die. The Canadian Osteoporosis Society publishes this data. More women die in Canada every year from that scenario than the combined mortality rate from breast and ovarian cancer. Now, we have some idea how to reduce risk of breast and ovarian cancer, but we don't have all the answers. But to reduce risk of osteoporosis, we know exactly how it can get done. And it's primarily lifestyle, being proactive, the things that we're talking about.
And it's education.
Yeah.
Because again, if we get past the mindset that when I get old, everything breaks down and then I'm going to fall and break a hip.
It's easy too. It's not difficult. And actually, most of it's really common sense. And across Canada, there's some excellent falls prevention programs. For example, the Canadian Chiropractic Association has a great new program that's available. You can get all the information right online, called Best Foot Forward. And it's a wonderful program for prevention. And there's some simple things that aren't difficult. For example, you shouldn't have slippery carpets in your bathroom. You should have some treads gripping treads on your stairs. You shouldn't put furniture in precarious positions in your house. And so not only can we think about the exercise component and all the great things that exercise does, reduce weight, improves balance, all of those things, you can also do some very practical things to prevent falls. And this is why Health Canada and the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care have such focus on falls prevention, because they know it has a lot of morbidity, which means ill health for your future, but it has a high mortality rate, relatively speaking, attached to it.
Those are good practical
And it's
steps,
great to have those practical steps. What I'd like to see is kids in high school learning already. I'd love to see environments where young adults are thinking already that they're not going to end up like maybe they heard grandpa was or great-grandma, that they have a chance to take care of themselves.
Well, why isn't nutrition and some human physiology part of the high school curriculum? I mean, I used to dissect earthworms, and I looked at cells, and we did different experiments, with the Bunsen burners. And, you know, so most people end up knowing more about their car and their iPod than they do about their own body. In a world where education is one of the biggest priorities of the government and, you know, different families, why isn't this in the educational curriculum? Because had I learned these things earlier, I would have been a better athlete. I was a good athlete. I would have been a better athlete. And I would have been able to implement some of the changes I've made, you know, maybe in my 30s after I did my master's degree in nutrition. But up to age 30, when I look back, I was a disaster because I didn't really know what I was doing.